Move on to the open space acquisitions, item 7. Consideration of resolution 2322 approving the filing of an application for $269,605 in funds under the Bucks County Open Space Program for the purchase of 9.5 acres of the Hildebrand property, and then consideration. Well, I guess we'll do that one first.
Yeah. Hildebrand is the first one on the agenda.
This is an application which, well, Terry could probably describe the property, but as I think the board and many of the residents know, we are the township's county conservation easement program is coming to an end soon. We do have, I believe it was $269,000 left in our amount, and thanks to the Terry and some others who were able to locate this property. It's at the corner of Big Oak and Stony Hill Roads, I believe, and it is, I think, close to 9 acres. Is that correct, Terry? Yes. And so the purpose of this was to use the county open space money, and then the balance be used by a match that is listed in the proposed resolution. It would be for a conservation easement on the property, and I'm sorry, fee simple. I'm sorry, this is the one that's fee simple. I don't want to mix these two up. It's a fee simple purchase of several acres of this property, with the remainder to remain with the property owners. But Terry, if you want to, I don't know if there's any more you want to describe it.
Thanks, Dave. You recall earlier in the year, the board authorized the purchase of the Jennings tract. That was 3 acres of land that was situated off of Taylorsville Road. In fact, between Taylorsville Road and the canal. That 3 acres allowed us to connect the canal at a location where there is a bridge over it, and locate that and connect that piece to Taylorsville Road, a public thoroughfare. And that was very much welcomed by all the residents in that area. We spent $225,000 on the property. That was the sale price, I should say. We received approximately $168,750 from the county open space program, and that was applied towards the 225. So that was our first purchase earlier this year. This Hildebrand property, which, by the way, I want to point out was highly recommended by the township's economic advisory committee, who had some years back inventoried
the EAC, environmental advisor.
I'm sorry, I
You
apologize.
said economic, Terry, yeah.
Sorry, Alan and Jim.
It's budget time. It's budget time. I'm thinking more economic than environmental these days.
Those acronyms always.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Jim. The environmental committee had spent a considerable amount of time inventorying properties, what the remaining open space properties within Lower Makefield Township. And I believe it's correct to say that the Hildebrand property, which we want to get into now, was very much high on the EAC's list. And so, again, as David said, what's before you this evening is the first step. The first step is to make application to the county for an open space grant. As Dave pointed out, the grant itself will be in an amount of approximately $270,000, which represents the remaining amount of grant money allocated for Lower Makefield Township by the county. And the township, by adopting this resolution this evening, will also commit to our match, which is estimated to be about 190,395 acres. The Hildebrand property is situated at the intersection of Stony Hill and Big Oak. If you drive in that neck of the woods, as you're driving east on Big Oak, and you get to that intersection, you glance to your left, and you'll see a very nice historic type house there. It's right very, very close to the intersection. The Hildebrands have owned that property for a number of years. I want to say that we had it was a very pleasurable experience negotiating the sale with Hildebrands. They were very, 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 very much wanting the township to purchase the property. They have had on a number of occasions developers approach them, and their property it seems to be very much of interest to developers. The only condition Mrs. Hildebrand wanted us to attach to this sale was that there shall absolutely, positively not be any public hunt on their property. So no public hunt. The deer hunt is something that has been very common throughout the township. It's been very successful, and Mrs. Hildebrand is partial to deer. So we'll figure that part out. So it's your town. It's our recommendation that the board approve this resolution, allowing us to submit the grant application, get that to the county. We've had an appraisal. The first appraised value pegged the property at $460,000. Ultimately, we will have to have a second appraisal done. That is in the works right now, and we'll have the results of that shortly. We'll combine the two appraisals, and we'll put that into the county.
Thank you, Terry. I don't know if any of the other board members have any comments before.
I do. Terry, so with respect to the future of that property, should this deal be commenced, what restrictions, prohibitions, rules apply as a result of our accepting open space money from the county?
Well, it will have, ultimately, there will be an easement that the township will execute with an open space easement, with the county being a party to that easement. And it'll be a typical terms and conditions, no development. So it'll be highly restricted.
Right, so that's really my point of my question is, so people know at home what we're doing is we're purchasing the property, we're taking some money from the county, which basically gives us a partner in the property, which in essence prohibits any further development of the property, buildings and such. Not there are some permitted uses, but it would in essence stop development of those acres.
I just want people to understand the proximity of this property to 5 Mile Woods. If I'm not mistaken, 5 Mile Woods will be in the lower left. On the opposite side of the street, there are, I think, 2 lower left, lower right. Depends on which way you're looking. I'm looking at this over here. So yes, on the TV, it would probably be the opposite. No. If you could just show us.
5 Mile Woods is to the west.
It's to the west. I was correct. And across are 2 lots right now that they haven't been able to sell. And also the Guzikowski, which will come up afterwards, is pretty much connecting to this area, which would leave us a large open, basically the farm or open area.
And we also own property on the other side of the street.
Correct.
Of Stony Hill.
It's township. So they're closely interconnected.
Is any other Supervisor Lewis? You have a comment? Supervisor Fritchie?
Yes, the 9.5 acres that we would be buying, assuming we proceed with the resolution and everything works out, are currently wooded areas. Am I right on that?
Yes, there's a certain amount of protected natural resources within that 9.5 acres, but at the end of the day, our engineers have calculated that regardless, there could be as many as 5, if not more, building lots that could be constructed within that 9.5 acres.
But if we go through with this deal, it's
locked in.
Likely to be woodlands.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2322, approving the filing of an application for $269,605 in funds under the Bucks County Open Space Program for the purchase of the 9.5 acres of the Hildebrand property as discussed this evening.
Second.
Just a couple comments. So the Hildebrands would retain 1.5 acres.
yes.
The purchase would be subject to a subdivision next year.
Yes.
And what would happen if the second appraisal comes in at a higher price or lower price or whatever? Is that going to change the...
Split the difference.
Okay. My last comment is I want to thank the EAC for multiple recommendations. The recommendation that I know came to us as a Board of Supervisors a couple years ago and indicated that this property was on your top 10 list. It was frankly in your top 5. And, it's a long time coming. I know you've worked very hard on it, Jim Bray in particular, Alan as well. And, it's a real credit to you that we're at the finish line here. So thank you both. And yeah, absolutely. Thank you to the certainly to the EAC. So very happy to make this, have this motion move forward. So I don't know if there's any public comment on this. Mr. Bray, absolutely.
My name is Jim Bray. I'm a resident of Lower Makefield Township and currently a member of the Environmental Council. And I would like to thank the board very much for considering this acquisition. I think one of the best things that a governing body can do for the people in their municipality is the purchase of open space, because I think no matter how you look at the situation, it's a winning situation. For one thing, you don't have to worry about the maintenance of infrastructure. You don't have to worry about additional police protection. Now, this property could probably have another 5 or so houses on it. They're not going to be built. And one of the reasons I think that people move to Lower Makefield Township is because of our pastoral heritage. And I think that's real important. Aesthetics is a very, very important part of my life, and I think it's a part of a lot of other people's lives as well. So to me, what you are doing here tonight, if you approve this, is leaving, I think, the best legacy that you can leave to the people of Lower Makefield Township, and I applaud you for that. This has been a while coming, but, sometimes good things are worth waiting for. It would have been nice a couple of years ago, but, it's wonderful tonight. And again, I want to extend my thanks to the board. I want to extend my thanks to the Environmental Council as well, too. Just briefly, back in the summer and spring of 2007, 3 members of the EAC undertook an inventory of all the remaining open space in Lower Makefield Township. And we reviewed actually 289 properties. The Hildebrand property was one of those, and this was one of our higher rated properties as well. What we did is then we prioritized the 289 properties based upon ease of development. So the criteria that we're really looking at was if the property could easily be developed, that would have a high priority. So again, like the Guzikowski property that's coming up next and the Hildebrand property, they both fell under those guidelines. So anyway, again, little history, but thank you again.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. So seeing no further comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. 5-0. Pass. Congratulations, and very happy to have that as part of the township. So moving on to the next item is the consideration of Resolution 2323 to purchase an agricultural conservation easement in the amount of $3,775,000 for 44 acres of land owned by Sandra Guzikowski.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public, this too, as Mr. Bray referenced, is a property that has been long coveted by the EAC and the township for a conservation easement. Recently, in the last several weeks, we've had significant discussions with Ms. Guzikowski and her representatives about this property. The impetus for this was the recent bond issue issued by the township, which included the designation of some portion of that for the purchase of open space. Mr. Fedorchak was very involved in the process, as well as myself and members of my office. What we have before you tonight is a resolution authorizing the acquisition of a conservation easement on 44.6 acres comprising the tax map parcel that's shown on the TV and on the easel over here on Big Oak Road, and I'll go through some of the specifics in the resolution here in just a moment, and also note that two attachments would include an agreement of sale for the conservation easement, as well as the conservation easement document itself. It's important to note that we did have appraisals done as was required by the applicable codes, including the second-class township code, and the number that's referenced, the $3.775 million number, is one of the numbers that was also determined by the appraisals for the property. So this is not a number that's pulled out of the air, but it has a specific reference point. So, and also the property will be subject to what's called the Conservation and Preservation Easements Act. And the reason why that's important is because we would also not be required to have transfer tax paid. And it also indicates what the limitations of the use would be. Here, I will note that the total property is 44.6 acres. 5 acres of that will be reserved for what's called a building envelope to allow Mrs. Guzikowski to conduct certain activities consistent with agricultural use, but will allow her to maintain certain activity if she wants to, for example, sell trees, something like that, or sell farm goods or things like that. She would be able to do that consistent, again, with the requirements of that particular act. I don't think I need to go through paragraph by paragraph. Everybody be put asleep, but I would note that we have indicated several restrictions which are consistent with, as I said, the applicable act. And by the way, the language in this is very similar, if you recall, to the discussion that Lynn Bush from the County Office of Open Space had with us about the proposed easement that will be finalizing on the Patterson Farm. So the restrictions will be very similar on this property for the easement as they are on the Patterson Farm. So we'll have, again, I think significant control, but at the same time, Mrs. Guzikowski can enjoy the property in the manner that she has been, as well as to be able to continue to farm and to continue to use it in a manner that's consistent with that. And, of course, the residents of the township will benefit from that as well. Mr. Bray, I don't know if you want to make any other comments about this. You and Mr. Dresser both have worked diligently for years, and you probably know this property better than anybody but Ms. Guzikowski, I would suggest at this point. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that or not. But
yeah, we could wait. I mean, you could make. Yeah, wait till. Yeah, wait. We'll do after the supervisors have a chance to comment.
Okay, for the public's benefit, Mr. Truelove, the first business we attended to on open space acquisitions was the Hildebrand property, and that was in essence an outright property wherein the title to the property will vest in the township and the county because of the open space money.
Correct.
This parcel is quite different. This parcel, the title will remain in the owner, Sandra Guzikowski, and all that Lower Makefield is actually purchasing are, in essence, the development rights upon the property.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, and that's something that, again, is consistent with the programs that both the county and the township have been involved in to make a choice between the fee simple approach, if it's feasible and affordable, or the conservation easement approach, which does allow in perpetuity the restrictions on the property to be consistent with the current use. And I'm sure many residents probably have seen as they drive throughout the county the signs that are posted from time to time which designate open space, and usually it's in a conservation easement program where you see that.
Does the county favor one method above the other?
They don't. It depends on the property. They kind of look at each property individually to see what is the best way to, a lot of times it depends on who owns it and what they want to do with it as well. So in this particular case, Ms. Guzikowski is a dedicated farmer, and she has agreed that obviously that for certainly a fair price, that the use of the property will continue in perpetuity to be consistent with what it is now.
And when the time comes that Ms. Guzikowski is prepared to sell her property, whomever that subsequent purchaser is also then bound by the conservation
Absolutely. All these documents, once the agreement of sale would be consummated and the property transferred, everything will be recorded at the Recorder of Deeds office. Anybody who would be considering purchasing the property would be placed on notice through the Recorder of Deeds office of the limitations of use on the property.
Okay, and with respect to the appraisals, I think this is directed to Mr. Fedorchak. With respect to the appraisals, did we have 2 appraisals, or are we in the same situation as we are?
No, we just need 1 appraisal in this matter.
Okay, and did we only appraise for conservation easement, or did we also appraise for outright purchase?
Just conservation easement. Oh, I'm sorry, there was I apologize. We did have a second fee simple appraised value in that as well.
Do you recall what that amount was?
I want to say it was about 400,000 or 500,000 more.
It's exactly 400,000 more.
Mrs. Guzikowski, if I'm not mistaken, was not interested in an outright purchase. She's been a very good steward of her family's land, and she wanted, from what I understand, speaking with her over a year ago, well over a year ago, I believe in September of the previous year, she wanted to be sure that when she was no longer able to farm or she passed, that whoever had title to the land would again be good stewards of this as farmland. And I've driven by there now for over 40 years, and it is a beautiful, beautiful piece of property. And I have to be honest, we hit Falls Township, but I believe Falls has some of that as open space as well. It really would connect us with the 5 Mile Woods, and it certainly is what the state of Pennsylvania and the county tell townships and other municipalities is the type of property that we really want to preserve. It is with 44 acres, it could easily be 88 or more homes, which is a lot, and this is something I've worked on for over a year, so I'm really happy to see this, come to fruition tonight.
Just saying, is anybody else on this board somewhat troubled by the fact for $400,000 we could be the outright owner of this property?
Doesn't want to sell
versus I'm worried about what is best for our township and for our residents, Judy. Is anyone else concerned about that, interested in that, pursuing that as an outright purchase?
But
Go ahead, please.
I think one of the options could be upon her decision. She's very limited in her buyers after the execution of this agreement. At that point, the question for the township is, would they want to buy it, given that they've gotten the value that the township has earned of limiting development from it? And if another farmer wanted to purchase it and use it, would there be an issue with that?
What would that cost be, John? I wonder. So it's going to be more than the $400,000 that it is right now, wouldn't you say? So that's what I'm trying to play out.
Not necessarily, and the reason why I say that is farmland in the United States has become cheaper in some areas of the country, predominantly in the Midwest, as a function of a couple things. One is the number of farms that are, not operating anymore, and so as a consequence, family farms are being bought up by large corporations, and so you have a roll-up in this area. This is a relatively small acreage compared to some of the stuff you would see, like, say, Iowa or even the central part of Pennsylvania. So it may not have a value that's higher than $400,000 at that time. And it's different, and even if you look at residential properties, if we've always seen that large increase up until 2008. Farmland's a little different in terms, and I'm not a certified real estate appraiser.
Let me go back to Terry then. Does the appraisal speak to the value of the property after the conservation easement? So what I'm saying is, okay, we go forward with this. We have a conservation agreement, and Sandy decides she wants to sell the property, understanding that we're bound by that. She's bound by that conservation easement. What's the value of the property?
Well, once the conservation easement is established, it's the $3,775,000. I don't know if I'm understanding your question correctly. Outright purchase is $4,175,000. So the delta there is $400,000.
Okay, that wasn't quite what I was asking, but
Sorry.
I don't think that you would have the answer to that either. So what is the residual? So we go through with this, and then we decide to purchase the property from Sandy when she no longer wants to farm it. What is that value? And are we being foolish and not just paying the $400,000 right now and buying the property outright? That's the point I'm trying to make here.
I do want to add, I echo what Judy just said. It's been my understanding as we proceeded through the negotiation process that Sandy wanted to maintain control over the entire 44.5 acres to the extent that she could for a variety of farming purposes, and she had a number of thoughts in mind. So I think that would be important to her to maintain control over that property to the extent that she could, subject, of course, to the conservation easement.
Terry, did the staff explore a right of first refusal on the remaining value of the land?
Establish that number now, right?
No, we did not.
Okay.
That's a very good question. Was that something that we should be
I
doing
think that
here?
we originally approached her with buying it outright. I'm not sure, and I don't think, Jeff, I think you might know better on that.
So I'll just give so here's the history. So, and I said this before, I guess to the supervisor. So this has been probably 10 years in the making, and there's been, I believe this is the third different appraisal of this property. Going back to, I know there was one in 2009, there was one probably, I believe, before that even. So again, this is a conversation that's taking place. It's always been the same type of discussion, very similar to the Wright Farm. So if you look at the Wright Farm, which Ruth Wright, sold the conservation easement to the township, she still owns it, and this is going back to 2000, Ruth Wright did it in 2000, on 82 acres, 2004, December 2004. So it's not unprecedented in the township. Sandy can't approach this. She's always approached it in the same way as a conservation easement. Going back to the history of 2009, when the market kind of plummeted, the difference, or the delta, as Terry indicated, was much more significant. So it was probably a difference. I know exactly what the difference is because I actually brought it with me. But it was a difference of, I want to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of $900,000 between the value of the farm and the conservation easement. So this time it's $400,000 because they take 4 comparable sales of conservation easements throughout different townships, and when they came back, and it's the same person who did the appraisal. Mr. Gleason did this appraisal. He did the appraisal back in 2009. I believe he did the appraisal back when the first one was done. But in any event, the change has really taken place because when farms are being sold, the development rights are everything. So yeah, we could go in and buy, and say, Sandy, hey, you know what? We thought we actually would prefer to buy the parcel outright. It would make sense. It's only $400,000 more. The problem becomes she doesn't want to do it. So it sort of becomes a situation where she wants to maintain the property, just like Ruth Wright has maintained the property for the last decade plus. And when you don't have a willing seller, you kind of really have to either say, well, we'll do this, or the threat of Toll Brothers or whomever else comes in and develops this. This is a very, as Terry indicated, a very developable piece of property. This is not something that, like a Hildebrand property where they'd have to clear woodland or do some, this is wide open acreage. They could come in and do minimal, it says it actually in there, that limited amount of land available for development in Lower Makefield. It's a superior residential location. So we could go back and talk to her and say, you know what, we kind of thought about this and we'd rather purchase it outright. My thought is, this is the deal that's always been in place. And frankly, the other board of supervisors, God bless their heart, but they got cold feet and they didn't follow through on a promise that was made. And now we're looking at being at the finish line. And I think we should cross the finish line because we've committed to, again, going back to 2008, when the bond or the referendum in 2008, November of 2008, one of them talked about acquiring agricultural conservation easements. The township would purchase agricultural conservation easements or participate in, land preservation programs. So this is all part of the $15 million bond that we talked about. We haven't spent a dime of it other than if you want to talk about the Hildebrand property, some of the matching funds there and some of the matching funds from the Reagan tract, but we haven't touched, any money, and we just talked about borrowing $4 million or $5 million for open space, this was kind of always the thought process.
There's also the maintenance issue. If we own the property, we have to maintain it, we have to maintain the house. There's a lot of maintenance. We have to find the farmer who's going to farm it, which we've done. It wouldn't be owned by Farmland Preservation, it would be us, and it's another housekeeping chore. This way, she wants to sell it, she's selling it as what it is, a very small farm. And it's really, we didn't have an option also because Sandy did not want to sell it outright. I think she was concerned.
Was that conversation had? That's my question.
Yes.
Yes.
Did
Yes.
Sandy say, I'm not interested in an outright sale? Okay.
Correct. Yes, that's a.
And part of it is,
that was your question? Yeah, it's so simple.
Part of it is this township bought other farmland that, for some reason, is still a piece of it is still in litigation because it did not have a conservation easement and has cost us a tremendous amount of money in this litigation, which I now know is still ongoing forever. And I think this way we really, in her mind as well as our minds and the minds of the township, this land will remain farmland in perpetuity. Yeah. And I think that is what was the thought to begin with.
That's really the bottom line. At the end of the day, we accomplished the purpose that we set out to do, which is to get a conservation easement and have this piece of property as farmland in perpetuity. That appears to be how it's going to be, whether we own it at the end of the day or whether some other farmer owns it at the end of the day. And if and when she decides that she wants to sell it, we'll still be here. So,
okay, then, in light of our conversation, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2323 to purchase an agricultural conservation easement in the amount of $3,775,000 for 44 acres of land owned by Sandra Guzikowski.
And I will happily second that.
So, any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Alan? Mr. Dresser?
Brief one. Alan Dresser, 105 East Ferry Road, and I'm current chair of the Environmental Advisory Council. Well, this will be a shocker, but I'm 100% for this.
What?
No disrespect to the bamboo ordinance, but these two resolutions are the best things you've done all year, so congratulations.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah. And Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, this will be the first significant addition to our preserved open space since the 2004 Wright Farm, right? That's been 12 years since we've really...
That's correct.
Okay.
Certainly of any consequence, yes.
Okay, so that's great. I worked out the numbers. It comes out to $11 per household, average household in the township for 20 years, and then we own it, or own the conservation easement and the property free and clear. So that's great. And I had a long description of all the economic benefits of acquiring these properties and the conservation easement, which I'll save everybody the time and not go through. But it's going to reduce the need for future property tax increases, not having these 93 homes built. And all the homes in the immediate area are going to have an increase in their property value. So like Big Oak Woods and all those neighborhoods in the area are going to benefit from this. And I wanted to point out that open space has contributed a net $1.4 million to the general fund over the last 10 years, and that's mainly from the sale of about 26 acres of open space that has occurred at the Patterson Farm, at Elm Loam, and the
Park and Ride.
Park and Ride, yeah. Only 7.5 acres of that. So this is a great thing, and I'm very happy.
Thank you very much, Alan. Hi, Jim.
Yes, I'm Jim Bray, the current member of the Environmental Council, and I just want to comment very briefly on this acquisition and why we think it's so important for the people who live in Lower Makefield Township. Contiguity in open space is an incredibly important issue. What we have here is a 44.6 acre farm that abuts preserved land in Falls Township that abuts 5 Mile Woods. If you talk to any environmentalist, this contiguity and these wildlife corridors are an incredibly important issue that ultimately result in clean air and clean water and flood mitigation. So I think that's a real important issue as far as this is concerned. And again, we have been looking at this farm for over 10 years. Quite frankly, we think this is one of the jewels in the crown for Lower Makefield Township. I could not be more pleased with the action of the board tonight, and I salute all of you and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, and thank you, the EAC, for your hard work. Adrian.
Adrian Costello, 2122 North Crescent Boulevard. Just want to say thank you. You're the fifth board now that's had the opportunity to use what we voted for in 2008, and you're the first ones to do anything significant like this with it. Just want to say thanks.
Make sure you tell Ken Sada. Remember when he asked a couple months ago that what we're going to do?
Hi, Tim Collins, 479 Jenny Drive. Just a couple questions. This property, has there been a sale sign on it?
No.
It's the
Drew
different.
Farah?
No, that's a different.
Yeah, that's the.
That's that little.
Drew Ferrara.
That's right on the corner.
Okay. All right. The only other question I have is numbers. Hildebrand's property is across the street.
Right.
For 9.3 acres, we're spending roughly $28,000 per acre. For this property, it's almost $90,000 per acre.
Yeah, the value.
Can somebody explain that?
Yeah, the value is not on a per acre basis. The value is based on lot yield, buildable lot yields. The Hildebrand property, for the 9.5 acres, we're looking at a number of around 5 lots would be the most you could realize from that. In the case of the Guzikowski tract, and if you look at the aerial right away, what jumps out at you is you have a very open piece of property, very, very little in the way of protected natural resources. That's all the way at the southernmost section of the property. It is a very, very attractive piece of property for development, very easy to develop, and at least 52 lots minimum you can realize from that tract. So that's what the difference is.
Okay.
It's the lot yield.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm Jim Wilson from 2111 Yardley Road, and I brag all over the country to my friends and family about what we have done in Lower Makefield Township. Jim, I want to thank you so much and your committee for everything you guys have done. This is why I lived here 30 years and don't plan to leave, and I am really proud of what this board has done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks. John Helferty, 875 River Road, used to be Riverdale, sorry. 875 River Road in Lower Makefield. As a resident, I'm always grateful and happy to have my well-earned tax dollars go towards open space preservation. I know we talked about active recreation. I've put kids through YMS and through BAA, and I'm a big supporter of active rec sites and all kinds of parks and rec stuff like that. But as a resident, my heart is with the passive open space. My third child would just as soon walk in the woods, and so the passive stuff is important to me as a resident. Most of you know me not as a resident, but as the naturalist over at 5 Mile Woods, and so in that regard, I will also commend the board and express my significant support for this. Before I was the naturalist, going on almost 20 years now at 5 Mile Woods, I was on the EAC, and we were doing the very same kind of open space assessment kind of tasks that these good folks were doing, and I remember looking at some of these same properties, and so it is really encouraging to see their efforts finally pay off, and for the sun, the moon, and the stars to all align. I appreciate your efforts. Nobody's thanked the Hildebrands or Sandy Guzikowski yet publicly tonight, and so going back to the Hildebrand property, I know that site, is constrained more by natural resources and therefore maybe is somewhat less economically valuable in terms of development, but they could easily have gone the development route, and so credit to them, and my public thanks as one of their fellow residents of the township for them choosing to approach the township and to go the open space route. And similarly, Sandy's been a an amazing resident of our township for a long time. She's a good neighbor to the 5 Mile Woods Preserve. It's encouraging to see people that are interested in keeping active farm working in the property, farmlands working in the township. And so I think it's encouraging that folks like that, again, have an opportunity to have their future be as they wish, stay in ag, stay in farming, have that be economically valuable instead of having to fall back on the more economically sometimes tempting prospect of going to a developer where, you know, in theory you could maybe get more money. In terms of the way this connects to 5 Mile Woods, this backs up to Falls Township property, it's the Sadowski property, which does not actually connect directly to 5 Mile Woods. There's another forested portion of a property that is still in private hands, ironically another Guzikowski relative. And so there's always more work to be done. I'll just plant that seed. I don't know that we have a lot of control over that because I think that's all Falls Township properties. But as I think Jim Bray mentioned, connecting these you know, pearls on the string is indeed very important. The important thing about the Guzikowski and the Hildebrand property is they do help connect a nice greenway that in these two cases is the headwaters of, I think it's Rock Creek. Guzikowski, I think, is the true headwaters, and it flows north and then easterly, I'm sorry. So it's preserving a wildlife corridor that helps deer, for example, not all get trapped on one property like 5 Mile Woods. They can, you know, wander around. It's not surprising to me that Mrs. Hildebrand was fond of deer because I'm sure they're running that whole corridor. So it's good to protect those things. That's the worth in it from an environmental standpoint, is connecting these corridors, protecting these corridors. I will go on record. I think Kristen was asking issues about whether there's an opportunity for a right of first refusal. I'm not sure there's a harm in asking for that, and so that opportunity may present itself one way or the other, but if there's no harm in asking for that, that might be something to, you know, see if we can work into the agreement. But Sandy's always been great about, you know, that environmental, more, you know, protective philosophy anyway, so I'm not sure that wouldn't happen anyway. But so thank you very much for, you know, finally enabling this whole thing to come to fruition and to get more passive green space in the township. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
John.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Great job by everybody on the board, and thank you for the EAC.